Success doesn't begin with noise, it begins with clarity. The more you talk about what you're going to do, the less energy you have left to actually do it. You don't need approval, you need results. And results come when your energy is focused not on explaining, but on executing. When you speak too soon, you invite judgment, you invite resistance, you expose your plans to minds that don't see your vision. Every time you speak about your next move, you're giving away a piece of your momentum. Silence isn't secrecy, it's strategy. There comes a point where you have to confront a hard truth. Talking about your goals isn't the same as achieving them. In fact, excessive talking can become a substitute for action. It feels good to tell others what you're going to do. You get a hit of validation, a small taste of recognition, even before any real work is done. But that's the trap. Because while words can spark motivation, they can also create the illusion of momentum. You start convincing yourself that you're making progress simply because you're describing it vividly. The meetings, the social media posts, the long conversations about what's next. None of that replaces the hours of focused, uncomfortable, disciplined work that actually moves you forward. And if you're not careful, you can spend more time building narratives than building results. What most people don't realize is that when you talk too much about your intentions, your brain registers it as partial accomplishment. That's why it can feel so satisfying to make big declarations. I'm starting a business. I'm going to get in shape. I'm working on something big. But unless those words are backed by consistent, quiet execution, they mean very little. Goals don't materialize because they were announced. They materialize because you made them non-negotiable, whether anyone knew or not. The people who truly succeed aren't the ones constantly talking about what they're planning to do. They're the ones too busy doing it. They let their progress speak louder than their promotion. They understand that greatness is built behind closed doors, not in public opinion. If you find yourself talking more than you're doing, it's time to shift your energy. Replace declarations with discipline. Replace validation with action. Start moving in silence, not because you're hiding, but because you're focused. You don't need to tell the world what you're building. Let the finished product speak for itself. The less you explain, the more you execute. And the more you execute, the less you'll feel the need to explain. The loudest person in the room isn't always the most capable. Often, it's the quiet one doing the work no one sees. When you stop seeking attention and start demanding results from yourself, everything begins to change. Let your results become your reputation. When you constantly feel the need to explain yourself, it's often a sign that you're not surrounded by the right people, or that you haven't yet built unshakable trust in your own vision. You find yourself spending more time justifying your choices than making progress on them. You defend your goals, explain your next move, rationalize why you're stepping back or stepping up, and it's exhausting. It wears on your energy and your confidence. The truth is, people who are not meant to understand your journey will always question it, and the more you explain, the more you invite unnecessary judgment into your process. This cycle of over-explaining robs you of the mental clarity you need to execute. It takes you out of alignment with your goals and traps you in a place where you're reacting to doubt instead of responding to your own purpose. When you're overly focused on making others comfortable with your ambition, you begin to compromise your edge. You soften your plans, you edit your dreams, and you downplay your hunger just to fit into someone else's idea of what's reasonable. But your future doesn't need to be reasonable, it needs to be real. And real progress often looks confusing to people who haven't seen results at that level. So they question, they poke holes, they project their fears. And if you're not careful, you start internalizing those doubts and adjusting your pace to satisfy opinions that don't even matter. Over time, the need to explain becomes a weight. You delay action just to ensure everyone's on board. But the truth is, your life's direction is not a group decision. You don't owe anyone a breakdown of your every move. If your heart and your discipline are aligned, that's the only validation you need. That's why moving in silence is not just strategic, it's liberating. When you stop explaining, you start owning. You take full authority over your journey without the noise of outside expectations clouding your judgment. You move with intention, knowing that your work will eventually speak for itself. You trade approval for progress. You stop asking for permission and start commanding results. Well, it doesn't mean you shut the world out entirely. It means you protect the parts of your process that are still growing. And once they bloom, there will be nothing left to explain. Your consistency, your results, and your peace will become the only answer you need to give. Remember, the strongest trees grow in silence. Deep roots, no announcements. When you're surrounded by negative or envious energy, it slowly chips away at your focus, confidence, and creativity. You may not always recognize it at first. It often shows up subtly. People who question your every move under the guise of concern. Friends who suddenly distance themselves as you level up, or conversations that always seem to carry an undertone of resentment. Envy doesn't always look like outright hatred. Sometimes it looks like backhanded compliments, lukewarm support, or silence when you share your wins. And negativity doesn't always sound like insults. Sometimes it sounds like doubt, fear, and warnings disguised as advice. The danger lies in how easily this energy blends into your environment. Over time, you begin to shrink yourself, question your momentum, or water down your goals just to keep the peace. But peace, bought at the expense of your purpose, is not peace, it's quiet sabotage. This is why silence becomes a protective strategy. The less you share with the wrong people, the more control you keep over your energy and mindset. You don't owe anyone a front row seat to your progress, especially if they've proven they only show up to critique, not support. When you move in silence, you strip away the influence of external negativity. You no longer give envious people the opportunity to distract you or plant seeds of doubt. You stop feeding conversations that lead nowhere and start investing that energy into your growth. Quiet progress doesn't just protect your plans, it protects your peace. And in that peace, you find strength, clarity, and focus. The ones who truly care about your success won't need constant updates. They'll recognize it when it's real. The rest, let them wonder. Let your discipline speak where their energy tries to interfere. When you've been betrayed, copied, or undermined, it leaves a lasting mark on how you move forward. You may have shared a goal or idea with someone you trusted, a friend, a colleague, even a family member, only to see them steal it, downplay it, or twist it into something to use against you. It stings not just because of the act itself, but because of who you thought they were. Betrayal isn't just a loss of trust. It's a disruption of your creative and emotional rhythm. You begin to second guess not just other people, but your own judgment. You question who's safe to share with and whether openness is worth the risk. And in that questioning, something shifts inside you. You become more reserved, more guarded, more private. But this isn't weakness, it's wisdom being born. Experience has taught you that not everyone claps when you win. Some people are only around to listen, not to support, to collect, not to contribute. That's why silence becomes your power. After betrayal, you realize that your next move is safest when it's unseen. You stop broadcasting your intentions, not because you're afraid, but because you've learned the cost of misplaced trust. You don't need to announce your progress when you're too busy making it. You don't need to defend what's yours when your consistency will prove it's original. And you don't need to seek recognition when your results will speak louder than any betrayal ever could. Silence becomes your boundary. It becomes your filter. It allows you to build in peace away from the noise of imitation and sabotage. Let the copycats chase your old ideas. You're already 3 steps ahead. Let the undermines whisper in the shadows. You're building something that no one can touch because it lives in discipline, not approval. Your comeback isn't loud, it's focused. And when it arrives, it will need no explanation.